Thanks, James, for inviting us again. We love also what you do. Have been following, I guess, for years. You can consider Paleworks branding-wise as the wannabe version of 2x Elliott. We're not there yet, hopefully.
So you don't need to start with a lie. That's
yeah. Yes, we have a studio of two based in Berlin. Yağmur, my partner in crime, since 10 years. And we are running our creative studio, I guess, since seven years. Mm-hmm. And we try to structure the presentation in the 4 chapters. First, a bit of intro about the studio, and then our backgrounds, of course, our childhood, just a bit. And also, since the cities that we lived in had highly influenced how we work, we divided the presentation into chapters by city. And then as the last part, we will talk about what we are currently working on and what is going to be the next steps of our projects. So that slide actually summarizes everything, because when we first met, we are coming from different backgrounds, totally different backgrounds, but we were working on our individual projects, me and Yağmur, and we were constantly getting or asking feedback about, is it cool enough? What do you think about that? So this consultation was endless. And also we were always curious about each other's work. Whatever Yağmur does, I was trying to make that. Whatever I was doing, Yağmur was trying to make that. So we were always curious about our workflow. It eventually evolved into a collaboration. That's how the studio, formed 7 years ago. First background, right? That's me with a chunky head. I mean, it's always nice to look at your childhood photos, because normally you don't do that, but someone asked you to do so. I did, and that was the photo that I really liked, which kind of looks like Mona Lisa, I would say, in a cool way.
The hands.
Especially the hands. And in my childhood, my father was a painter, sculpture artist, let's say. And my mom was an art teacher. So I grew up with this gasoline smell, even in my kitchen, because my father was using our home as a studio, atelier, let's say. Also, she had a different studio. And I grew up with art and tried to become an artist, even doing calligraphy stuff. It was all appealing to me. But as a millennial, let's say, in that times, back in the years, becoming a doctor, engineer, lawyer, whatever the formal occupation you can think of, was more viable if you live in a small city, if you grew up in a small city. Even for my father, it was like, you want to become like poor like me, just do engineer and doctor stuff. Don't be an artist, it's shit. Then, of course, I became an engineer. So my first bachelor was a shit show. It was 4 or 5 years. I finished that. I started working on the factories as an intern, tried to make it happen. But obviously, it wasn't for me. I felt from the day one, but I wasn't a quitter. So I finished that, and then I start over graphic design again in my second bachelor. That's where the fun part started for me, at least. In the beginning, I was so into paper material, all these haptic feelings of this different printing techniques. So I started designing so many notebooks for this company called Paleworks Paper. Even one of the notebooks made it to MoMA. It was fun. So much notebooks, more than 50, 70, I guess. I designed so many notebooks, although I didn't use any of them because I was so lazy. I wasn't writing anything. That was my problem. I was designing notebooks, but not using them. But interestingly, that was the reason how we met with Yağmur, because her, without knowing me, bought one of my notebooks.
Actually, many.
Many notebooks. And then she realized that, okay, that's cool designer doing cool notebooks, blah, blah. So it all started like this. And back then, I started working in the agencies mostly for advertising projects, but I was so into visual identities and graphic design part, not the art direction or the advertising part. And I guess more than 10 years ago, right? Yeah, these dynamic visual identities were, booming. So I wanted to do one of those. It was for the graphic design days in Istanbul. It was the 19th version of it. So I used the axis as a 19 in Roman numerics. And the inspiration came from the Galata Bridge. It is one of the famous bridges in Istanbul. It felt right back then. And then I designed all this identity around it, doing the book design, all this website design, and all other fun stuff. It was one of my first big project, let's say, back then I was calling myself as a freelance designer. And it was fun to work with. Yeah, Yağmur.
Yeah, a bit of introduction to me. My name is Yağmur. I was born in Istanbul, and you will see sort of my evolution in life in these pictures. I also have a sort of a creatively oriented family, but somehow no one really took this as a serious career and carried on with it, except for me and my sister. So I wanted to make it in life as a creative. And I was always interested in the architectural forms, the built environment, the public spaces. So I was making drawings and illustrations by myself and ended up studying in Istanbul my bachelor in urbanism, urban planning. But something about this was feeling not right and was feeling stuck for me because it's really rigid. It's in a really big, vast scale. It doesn't really let you tweak things on your own without the rules. It's like you have to work in the municipality, etc. So I wanted to find a way to soften it, to smoothen it. And I started like collaborating with this artist from LA called Paige Smith to make a public art project. And we were filling the sort of cracks on the walls with these crystal shaped painted pieces to sort of repair and add some smiles to the faces of the people while they were passing by, and the children would just try to climb up and reach out and take a piece and take home with themselves. And the other way for me to break that rigidness was to write about design, art, architecture to magazines. So I worked as an editor for 3 or 4 years, which was sort of the start for me to the design world, because I was writing about people's processes and interviewing with them. That's how I learned and started to get interested in those kinds of fields as well. But at some point, I felt like everyone in the magazines, for example, if there is a news, was writing like almost the same things, and everyone was receiving the same package of images. So I wanted to change that by opening my own blog, which I called Urban Backlog, and took my own pictures, wrote about my impressions, and also invited lots of people from different parts of the world to take their pictures and write about their impressions. So that blog sort of grew up based on that. And so far, this is our Istanbul part without us really starting to like communicate with each other. But right after that, when we met in Istanbul, and then there was a job opportunity for Ozan, especially in LA, and I was already freelancing for magazines, and we moved to Los Angeles for 6 months. And while we were there, Ozan said, like, let's make the visual identity of your blog. And this is what we came up with, like using my images, the illustrations, and his graphic design skills.
I did the U emblem, and it has 2 balconies. I think it's nice.
Yeah, I was nodding to the architectural notions there. And we designed like some stationeries, the website, the post graphics, etc. And that led us to create our own first tangible product line, which are the postcards. And they were really special in a way that we chose 5 cities from Europe, 5 cities from the US, all of which we have seen in person and experienced. And then turn them into these postcard series that are still available on our website. So I would draw the illustrations, write the texts, and Ozan would design the pieces. From there on, we went back to Istanbul together and officially formed our studio. These 2 arrows that you see here is our emblem. And as you can see, they start from different points, representing us being 2 different people from different backgrounds, and then eventually sort of meeting in the same point. And our overall visual identity is quite like reduced to the minimum, sleek, a bit muted, but still have a sort of a quality that we wanted to achieve. And green is the main color of the overall identity. The next thing that we designed that we are still wearing every day, like right now I'm wearing, Ozan is also wearing, like we just wanted to make a merch that we would want to wear in any occasion, every day, that wouldn't go bad after 1 wash. And we just designed like every part of it. We didn't really like buy the already made models and print our label on it, but designed the whole model ourselves that would fit to everyone in 2 sizes. And then we started shooting, starting from Ozan's notebooks that he talked about, and also more products that Happily Ever Paper were selling, some like still life photography of theirs while we were still in Istanbul. Then the Weimar era came. Weimar is a small city, 60,000 people population, close to Berlin, where the Bauhaus movement was found. And I wanted to do my master's. Ozan wasn't really interested in that much at the time, and I really wanted to do it in this area where I wanted to just combine my urbanism and public space interest and art. And there was a program at the Bauhaus University in Weimar called Public Art. So I went there, and Ozan followed along and studied media art there. So we went to Weimar for 2 years during the 100th birthday of the Bauhaus movement, which was an amazing time for such a small city to just, you know, be vivid and lively with tourists and all these people who were interested in the Bauhaus. And this is one of the works that I did in Bochum, in Germany, in a brutalist architectural school campus, university campus. And I wanted to make people pay attention to these sculptural looking, but almost forgotten pieces that were just like around the whole campus. And the text here, you won't understand. I also don't really remember what they meant right now, but I could check. But they had a meaning that was nodding to some history of the school campus. And the other work was this photography series that I did, just capturing lots of lighting fixtures at the school. So imagine the Bauhaus movement is found here, and there are so many pieces that were created during that era 100 years ago. And I was questioning, what do we call a classic? Why do we call a piece classic? Can we still make something classic if we would design it today? And I just started capturing like all these lightings that were in sphere shapes, and realized that many of them are not the originals. So that was sort of my way of trying to get into that area of originality and classics.
Okay, this is.
And then Ozan's art.
Let me mute it down. Maybe I can just. Is it too loud? I hope it's fine. So this is me trying to act like an artist, I would say.
I was going to say to you, it plays no sound. It doesn't. There's no sound coming through.
Okay, cool. No worries. That's what I was achieving for anyway. So it has to be muted.
Okay.
So okay, as Yağmur said, we went to Weimar, and I wasn't, expecting to study again after 2 bachelors. And then I studied media art and design, learned creative coding. It was super fun doing that. But I felt maybe because of this engineering, all this rational thinking and rigid, education, I felt I need a brief, I need a client. I can't do all this art stuff by myself. So I think it was all about global warming, I do believe. And all these candles little melting as a landscape. That was the only project that I could say I could be proud of while I was studying there in Weimar. And then, of course, I was taking some freelance work, and it's a collaboration with one of my friends, Vincent Schwenke. He's this 3D nerd doing amazing stuff. Probably you know him. He's a super close friend of mine from Munich. And The Soul was one of my first serious, let's say, a Berlin-based job. This company is independent record label in Berlin. Everyone knew Soul back then. And it has this kind of old school electric guitar vibe logo. I felt, okay, you're already well known. Let's make something bold and more contemporary. It doesn't have to write Soul, but people will know that it's Soul. So it was at least kind of bold move for me as a new emerging, whatever, graphic designer. Of course, when you merge them with Vince cool 3D, whatever you do, it looks cool anyway on top. And I did all these layouts. Also, we designed the label system, that each label, how they can structure with each artist, and some 3D stuff. I think it was the first time I felt also I should learn some 3D, like Max, as you said. I felt I have so much flat design. Knowing 3D, at least, you don't have to be expert, but if you know the basics, you can do more stuff, and you can also describe your ideas to the client better. I think that was the first moment that I noticed that I should learn some 3D. And yeah, these are some applications as well.
The next project that we did while we were in Weimar was Gropius. As you know, Walter Gropius is the founder of the Bauhaus movement, and our friend who is an artist, he turned himself into a Bauhaus admired pop star. And he even wrote like a few songs that are, I think, quite good, that are in Spotify. I sometimes still listen to them. And we made his visual identity that ranged from his butt plug to the magazine to the posters.
It was way too bold, and he even had a performance during the opening of Bauhaus Museum. Imagine all these grandmas, grandpas around and seeing this performance. It was a big hit and a super bold move. And we really had some fun together doing this identity for him.
And this is Seeking Unseen, my lecture series that I had offered to the school, to the Bauhaus University, and they had accepted. I had the chance to teach it for 2 semesters. And this is like starting from my interest in the urban space and my studies and my blog. And how can I turn this into something to make people look around their built environment more? How do they realize there's more than what you use as the road to take you from A to B, but the culture, the past, the history, everything. So yeah, that's I think one of the moments in my life that I learned the most, because I was inviting the people to also talk about their realizations and what they were seeing that will be different from maybe the Weimar streets in their own country. So we were just like every week meeting to talk about these things. And we did the poster of it, of the 2 seasons with Ozan. And Flow is one of our biggest projects that is still continuing. It's a display system. This one is displayed at Paleworks agency in Berlin. And the system we designed with the inspiration coming from the Bauhaus movement, because it's never it was never a system like this that was designed through this time. That's a display system. It was always the tables, the lamps, or the chairs. And the other inspiration is coming from George Nelson, his work called Structubed, which is a display system that can be dismantled easily and flat packed and carried away all around. This is what we also did there. It comes in 3 different modules that you can add on each other and just expand it based on your need and space. And we launched it in Weimar next to the opening of the new Bauhaus Museum. Yeah, you can see some examples of it, some clothes hanging on it, and also it was used by formal settings to launch their typeface Silvana last year, and also this year a new version of it in Copenhagen and Berlin. And this is something that we wanted to touch upon briefly. These are not our designs. These are just sort of the knockoffs of our design by some other people that we don't even really know who. I think that's a struggle for all of us designers. When you put your work out there, you don't really know what will happen to it. But yeah, just something to mention and carry on. Then we moved to Berlin just around Corona times, after the school was finished. Us being in Berlin, imagining that we would create a community, that we will thrive and, you know, do more works and projects together. And then you finally somehow find yourself locked down at home. And here you see us being in our home office and just like circling around all the time around the columns. And this was the artwork that we wanted to represent, that feeling, that trapped feeling of.
Actually, it stayed quite some time at home like this for weeks. It was super relevant for us back then.
Yeah, just like wrapping our apartment, sort of a feeling. Then that wrapping feeling somehow continued to our racks. Ozan did more 3Ds with these ones. And then I had so much free time that I covered the whole rack with packing peanuts. And there's sort of this like nice contrast here, because packing peanuts are usually what we cover our pieces to protect them from getting scratched or broken with. And here I'm doing something that's opposite. I'm making like just naively one by one, putting it on around the steel rack and making it look like a cloud or a snow. And moving on with Flow Spring version, where we collected for Berlin Art Week exhibition. We were given a garden space. We collected all the leaves that were in the garden just covered the rack with it, and it stayed like that for 3 days, and it literally just disappeared in the space. Like people wouldn't even notice that there was such thing. Like with the flash, it's really visible here, but in real life, it wasn't. And in 3 days, even animals, I guess, got used to it being part of the garden. As you can see, the dog is peeing, the flies are around it, etc.
And this I can take over, I guess. This is the second collection, the furniture collection. But by the way, I really have to mention, we are not a furniture company. We are doing this just for fun. At the beginning, if we feel like we need a table, we do that and learn the process. And I think we like working with steel, especially tubular steel. And this was the second line we called Beats. And it's all produced in Istanbul. And it's like a jellyfish-looking table with 3 modules. And it's colorful, it's funky, it's playful. And also flat pack, of course, we have some, how to say, rules that we have to follow. It has to be flat packed, easily dismantled, modular, etc. Of course, it's in the beginning, it's something tangible, but it's always nice to see in a digital version of it to show the modularity and how it's all coming alive together in 3D. And also making it more playful, like a jellyfish vibe. I think back then it was the NFT booming times around. So we felt, okay, let's do something as well, like this NFT version of it. And this was some of the, oh wait, this is super funny because, as you know, Yağmur covered all the floor with packing peanuts, but of course I was way too lazy to cover the bees with packing peanuts. But instead I went with the 3D again with my horrible 3D skills. And this was a digital version of it covered with packing peanuts.
So we sort of like playing around with the furniture pieces, so-called.
I think also this functional art objects time was also booming. It was a thing back then. Maybe it still is.
And moving on with one of our biggest commission projects, we did the visual identity of the Venice Architecture Pavilion, Architecture Biennale, Turkish Pavilion. Architecture as Measure is the name of it. This was the 2021 project of the pavilion, created by Neyran Turan. And her idea was to change the perspective to the climate change and focus on the already existing parameters of architecture, such as the material usage, the quarries, the construction sites, all these things that are already existing, rather than what do we add on to it as a technological aspect of it. And she collected from like municipalities and so on in Turkey and beyond all these papers, like really boring papers. And our job was sort of to make them readable, legible, and more fun to look at. And we also we did everything, like the website design, all the print works, etc. And these numbers that you see on top are sort of nodding to the measure part of the project, like architecture, 12 syllables, and you put 12 on it. And if on the website there are, I don't know, 10 paperworks, then it continues, and then you see that number on top of it again. So that was just throughout the whole project. The project started it was for 2021 to launch in a year, but then when Corona hit, it was postponed. So we, in the end, worked on it for 2 full years and created so many assets based on that. And in the end, we also created this back series in collaboration with Reflect Studios to have something that would stay with us, because for this project, especially, the additional thing to the installation was not a book, but the website. So we wanted something tangible that we could take with us, or the people who were visiting could take with themselves.
And this was another project that we took with Yağmur, also in Berlin. I think it was one of the first all-arounder project that we did together, from the visual identity to other applications, including the brand voice and all this other fun stuff. It was a furniture brand that being launched in Austria and also in Germany. And also I get to work with one of my admired graphic designers, Mike Mere. We did the photo shooting together with him. He was launching his limited screen print editions. It was also fun to work with him as well.
Yeah, I think we did like everything from writing the copy, taking the photos, designing the website. So this was like this 360 approach, the two of us, the first time to a project.
It always gives you the room to learn new stuff, I guess. If you are in a very small team, it's always fun to work. This one was, again, for my friends, Vitaly Grossman and Vincent Schwenk. They are these two cool 3D nerds constantly collaborating together. And sometimes they do self-initiated projects rather than the client work. So they wanted to have this creative duo feeling and have sort of an identity. Since their names are starting with V, we went with VV and U. And they were having fun working together. I was having fun working for them. So I just made these two discs working seamlessly together and having fun. That was the main idea.
Gorillas is one of the projects that gave us the chance to work in a bigger team of people. And we did the initial visual identity with Ozan, and then he hopped off the team, and I continued being the only person as a creator for the first 6 months of the foundation of the company. And then we turned it into such a massive one. We were about 40 people in the creative studio and 11,000 people in the whole company. And the whole aim was to be able to keep up with the growth of the startup, because eventually it, I think, became one of the fastest growing startups in Europe also. And we were functioning in 9 different countries and working with many different agencies. So my role was as an art director and designer to keep everything streamlined and make them adjustable for all the different campaigns and social media assets. And we try to make everything as special as possible. Like we worked with font designer Eric Chasse. He created our font named Gorillas Sans. And we did lots of outdoors. But yeah, in the end, I was trying to be the person to create the consistency and make the brand guidelines and make it as big as the company would be, so that it would adjust to different needs and different people.
I think the most important thing for us is, as we said, we are a small studio of 2 only, but with that project, you learn to work with people, basically. We always even hesitate to take interns normally, because we are always hands-on with everything, like this perfectionist aspect. But with that kind of startup pace, you have to also learn to let go and collaborate with people in a faster pace, and adjust your workflow accordingly.
Yeah, definitely. And I learned that from this studio. Like it was just us working in teams, in groups, and just like having fun and brainstorming. And eventually, within the last year of the company, I think we created 5 different private labels, which was like crazy, considering still keeping up with the global company. And this is one of them that I worked on. I made the design of it, and I was trying to make something fun to look at in your kitchen, just a basic product. And because of the lack of my illustration skills, I just made really simple facial impressions that you would be having fun to look at.
Okay, so that's the last chapter of our work. So Cravers is our new baby, let's say. It's definitely a new chapter for us, especially for me, and it fundamentally changed our workflow, our studio vibe, and because now we have a startup. Like being as a creative, also running your own startup, it's weird, first of all, because you are the client, but also you are the designer, you are the creative. So back and forth, you're shuffling between those 2 personas. It's an interesting burden, but surely a fun, progressive way of evolving yourself. So it is a hazelnut-based snacking company, because we're all from Turkey, where the hazelnuts are coming from, like 70–80% of all world's hazelnuts coming from Turkey. And as I told you in the beginning, I love print. I love tangible stuff. Of course, I love digital, all these 3D cool things, but I like touching all this paper, the packaging, the print techniques and all. So Cravers allowed us to create so many assets. It's like a playground for us. And we also learned that with Paleworks, we were way too strict. way too perfect. And with Cravers, when you have a startup, you have to go faster and you have to learn the imperfection, embrace the imperfection. And also we had a small team in the beginning, shout out to all of them. And it was nice to collaborate and create all these assets. So much packaging design, as you can see. And with a small team, you almost do everything. That's me in the center, wearing this hazel hat in Tempelhofer Field in Berlin.
And I don't know if you can see it, but it's actually inspired by Ozan's head. Like a hazelnut shape, if you think about it.
I have a photo. I didn't put it
heel
here.
of it looks like his head a bit. So I think it's also coming from him. And we wanted to make a brand. Yeah, it's really healthy. It's really delicious. Trying to like tick all the points, but we didn't want to be this like naive Zen brand just because it's tasty and it's healthy. But how can we make it a bit more striking, a bit more vivid and tongue-in-cheek, and the cool kid at the back of the classroom sort of thing.
Because it's tricky when you create something healthy, delicious, but also try to become a lifestyle brand, you have to address so many different points at the same time. You shouldn't be way too pushy and premium. You have to also address masses. Because Cravers, I don't see like it's like this hipster cool brand around the corner selling to a bunch of premium stores, but instead it should go global and be more impactful, let's say.
Yeah, something, I don't know, like you would buy for your child or your grandmother because you trust in the product. And with Paleworks, we always have to have a bit of a distance with the audience somehow. Because
it's B2B mostly.
It's B2B, but with this, how can we touch the lives of people in an easier way? And Cravers also allowed us to reach out to people more than getting reached out to.
That's also interesting because as designers, we always like to be liked, you know, like there's a secret ego because you do visual stuff and everyone has an idea. But with Cravers, when you run a startup, you are getting used to being rejected all the time, like no, everywhere. And I am the one who is going and attacking all these people, not like clients are coming to us via referral, like in Paleworks. So that was also another different thing for us to navigate. So we partnered up with two co-founders from Turkey. Actually, one is my ex-client, Ersoy, and the other one is my high school friend, Arda. So it's a small team of 4 at the moment. And it has been, I guess, almost 3 years. And that's the thing. It really affected my life because I didn't take any big projects, none. So it was all about Cravers, having this long-lasting project as a designer without getting bored, trying to always evolve what you do and expand the business at the same time. It's a bit weird because Yağmur also felt that when you lose your creative personality so much and then your life becomes Excel sheet, like 5% of creativity, 95% of Excel sheets, liabilities, bureaucracy, all this stuff happening because it's food business and it's so delicate. And it was also weird for us to experience that as a designer. Shout out to my friend from Kevin from Mockup Maison. So provided some cool mockups, of course. Some of them are actually printed for sure. And let me show you more examples. Some 3D as well. And we have this long finger that we are using from time to time.
I think I panicked at some point, like a year or so ago, that I was losing my creative partner, even though you can see that like we did lots of creative visuals and we continued photographing the product and like made lots of graphic elements, but we weren't really doing any other branding projects through this startup process. But
I think it needs at least 5 years of commitment when you run any business. And it's not like a project that you finish in 6 months and you follow up the client sometimes, but this is your baby and it's your business and you have to be hands-on for years and years without expecting so much revenue or even a salary or whatever. And the consistency also within the brand has to be on point. So that was also a discipline that we learned as a designer couple. And some videos, so much fun stuff that we get to do with Cravers. Because there's no one judging you, you can just do whatever you want. Okay, that's the last part.
That's the last
We're
part.
wrapping it up.
We are wrapping it up with what's next. I think it's a good point right now to talk about my 2 years lasting chronic pain suffering phase. Like right now I'm much better, I can say, but in the past 2 years I was suffering from chronic back pain, like every day debilitating pain that I could finally figure out the reason of and could solve. But this affected us also immensely through this whole process, and I think delayed lots of our projects to be launched and continued to be developed. So Ozan was sort of left alone in some things, and I was also left alone in some things while we were continuing this phase. But now I think we have our energy back again. I am feeling much better. And we want to go back to some of the things that we have left off, such as we want to make a book coming from Ozan's printing experience, to make a book of my lecture series and my thesis at the Bauhaus University, which is like, this is a sneak peek. Another one is making a landscape series that's actually a carpet pattern for a brand. Another one is just like focusing on lifestyle and product photography for other brands. Just like you can see some examples here, shot indoors and of products, and develop flow and just add some plates, some screwable,
Some
items,
attachables,
some attachables to it, so that like it develops further to display more things, and let creatives, artists, designers to use this display system as their blank canvas, so that they can just put on whatever they want to onto it.
but not cover them with packing peanut, because we already did
We
that.
already did that. You already did that in 3D. And finally, adding new product lines to Cravers.
We get some investors.
Yeah.
That's it, I guess. Okay, thank you so much.
That's it from us.